humanitarian laws and human rights, but also
welcome back. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start the bulletin with the top headlines. Donations for a Sydney man who wrestled a gun from one of the alleged attackers during a mass shooting at the Bondi Beach have surged past 1.1 million Australian dollars as he recovers in hospital after surgery for bullet wounds. Son of jailed Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai accused China of weaponizing the law following a landmark verdict that could see his father imprisoned for life. Jimmy's son Sebastian Lai rubbished the evidence presented by Hong Kong's court. China's foreign ministry expressed a strong dissatisfaction and opposition to certain countries' blatant slander and defamation of Hong Kong's judicial system, pointing out that the central government confirms support to SAR authority. Thailand's military stops fuel shipments passing through a border checkpoint with Laos because of fears they were being diverted to Cambodia, with which it is currently fighting a fierce conflict. Ukraine's joint forces say that up to 200 Russian troops remain surrendered and surrounded in Kupiansk. On December 12, Zelensky had visited Kupiansk front where he recorded a video beside the city's half-destroyed entrance sign. Tesla's board of directors has reportedly earned more than $3 billion through stock awards that far exceeded the value of those given to peers at the biggest US technology firms at the time they were paid. Azerbaijan's president has proposed the biggest prison amnesty in his country's history to mark the year of the constitution. Reports suggest the amnesty could affect 20,000 people. Actor, director and political activist Rob Reiner and his wife have been found dead in the Los Angeles home. The police are investigating the circumstances as an apparent homicide. And viewers, the terror attack at Sydney's Bondi Beach during the Hanukkah gathering claimed at least 15 lives, sending shockwaves through Australia and the global Jewish community. The victims ranged from a 10-year-old child to an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, reflecting the indiscriminate brutality of the violence. The youngest victim, Matilda, was remembered as a bright, joyful schoolgirl whose death has left her family and community devastated. Among the oldest was Alex Klitman, a Holocaust survivor who reportedly tried to shield his wife from gunfire, losing his life in the process. Two rabbis, including Eli Schlanger and Chabad Bondi and Yaakov Levitin, were also killed. Both were deeply involved in community service and religious life, and their deaths have left a profound void. Other victims included professionals, volunteers and community members who had gathered peacefully to mark a religious celebration. The attack has reignited debate in Australia over gun laws and security for religious communities as the nation mourns lives cut short by hatred and extremism. And I now request Shaul Satka, who is a political commentator, to join us in this discussion. Thank you, Shaul, for joining me here at NewsX World. Now, there's sentiment in the Australian Jew community that the growing anti-Semitism in Australia was predicted, and so was this attack thereon. How do you react to those statements, especially when Netanyahu has also accused Albanese of ignoring growing anti-Semitism in Australia?
Well, absolutely. There's growing anti-Semitism not just in Australia but across Western countries. Thankfully, that's something that India itself has been immune from. But in these Western countries, there's growing anti-Semitism that predominantly comes from two sources. You have anti-Semitism that is native to these countries, which is rising both on the far left and the far right. It is the disease of political extremes. And then there is also anti-Semitism that is largely imported, along with immigrant populations that have arrived over the past 25 years or so, and they brought their extremely primitive views about Jews and Judaism with them. And so the Jews are being attacked from both directions, in fact, from all three directions. They're being attacked from the far left, they're being attacked from the far right, and they're being attacked by supporters of global jihad. And what we saw yesterday is the culmination of what has been happening in Australia for a very long time, whereby the Australian authorities, right up to Albanese, have been to some extent pandering to local people who approve and associate with jihad.
Sorry for that interruption, Shaul. I request my team to please do the audio checks. But request you to go on, Shaul. Shaul, please do continue.
Oh, so absolutely. So the question going on is, why is this happening? And it's quite clear why it's happening. The people who committed the attack, a father and son, the father is now dead, and the son is in jail. Well, he will be jailed. He's wounded. These people arrived in Australia from other places, and they brought their Jew hate with them. Who was backing them? Who was funding them? It could be any number of people. Or they could have simply been lone wolves who were inspired by propaganda that comes out of various Middle Eastern countries. This will continue happening until Western nations completely crack down on any kind of jihadi sympathizers that are within their nations. In Australia, there are a number of people who are extremely prominent online promoting jihad all over the world, and they work there with impunity. That really, if Australia doesn't want to see more of this, it's going to have to put an end to that kind of propaganda.
But let's talk about the role that many are suspecting Islamabad has to play in this. The father-son duo who are accused of the shooting are allegedly of Pakistan origin, and although we are an international news channel, we are based out of India, and India has time and again maintained how Pakistan continues to sponsor terror and give a safe haven to these terrorists. Do you think that Australia should now strongly denounce Pakistan as a terror sponsoring nation based on these reports, once confirmed, of course?
Well, if confirmed, it would not be surprising at all to hear that the attackers originate in Pakistan. A large number of terrorists around the world, dating back 40 years, have originated from Pakistan, and India knows that to its suffering.
Yeah.
The two guys who were murdered yesterday were of the Chabad movement, the same movement that provided the rabbi that was murdered in the Bondi attack some 10 years ago, when the Taj Mahal Palace was also attacked.
26/11.
If I remember correctly, were also of Pakistani origin.
Oh, for sure, yes.
And there's really no end to the depths that can be plumbed if this is not fought back against. In other words, we all have to recognize that there are people in the world who believe in jihad, who believe in violent conquest of nations where their religion is not respected. That is certainly not all Muslims. It's certainly a small minority of Muslims. The vast majority of Muslims are not interested in violent jihad.
Absolutely.
So, but those jihadists have to be fought. They have to be fought in the most vociferous way. They have to be fought without any compunction. They have to be defeated, because until that is done, what we saw yesterday will not just continue to happen, but it will become worse and worse. And they will continue to push. They will continue to push wherever they find something soft. So they noticed, because of the Australian authorities' tolerance for anti-Semitic invective and incitement against Jews that we've seen quite openly for 2 years without any pushback from the Australian government, the jihadis no doubt noticed that Australia is weak, Australia is soft. That's where you push. If they were to try doing what they did yesterday in the United States, for example, the pushback would have been far greater, or they would have thought it would have been, which is probably why they didn't. So they will push wherever it's soft. If people don't want that kind of stuff in their own countries, the first thing to do is make sure that you appear hard. You need to set a stony, cold face to jihad, and you need to tell them that there will be no quarry, there will be no quota for jihadism in your land.
Shaul, now of course the Bondi incident has also raised questions on the gun laws in Australia, and Albanese has made a statement in that regard, reopening question on gun licensing limits. Do you think this will also serve a precedent for the United States, which also saw a shooting at the Brown University yesterday?
I don't understand entirely the laws in Australia. Certainly, it does seem to be the case that it's hard to get a gun unless you're in favor of jihad, in which case you can get the guns that you want. If you would notice, the man who disarmed one of the terrorists yesterday was not the police.
Yeah, he was
the incident
Syrian.
Continuing for 10 minutes. And it wasn't the police that jumped on one of the attackers and took his gun away or shot him. It was a member of the public, a very brave man called Ahmed al-Ahmed, originally of Syrian extraction,
Yes.
who jumped on the attacker. The situation in the United States is totally different because, of course, there by constitutional deed, and that's 250 years old, and there's no prospect of that changing, people have the right to bear arms. And there's really no realistic way of changing that, certainly under a Republican administration and even under a Democratic administration in the future. To change that would require you would require a constitutional amendment, which requires 75% of all states to approve it, and that would never happen realistically.
All right, thank you, Shaul, for weighing in your opinion in this conversation and joining me here at NewsX World. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on now to news. In fact, some reaction now coming in over the terror attack. The terror attack at the Bondi Beach has sent shockwaves through the global Jewish community, and the attack has drawn widespread criticism and condemnation from the international community as well. Messages have been coming for over solidarity. Former US President Barack Obama has reacted by expressing deep sorrow for the families who lost loved ones and by extending support to Jewish communities observing Hanukkah amid grief and fear. His message focused on remembrance, hope, and the symbolic strength of the festival's lights during a dark moment. Now let's move on to news from Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai's son is calling on the UK government to take stronger action in securing his father's release from prison. Sebastian Lai, speaking at a press conference in London, urged the British government to make his father's freedom a condition for closer ties with China. Lai's father, the 78-year-old pro-democracy tycoon, was convicted on national security charges in Hong Kong this week. He was found guilty on 3 charges, including collusion with foreign forces. Sebastian Lai emphasized that it's time for the UK to move beyond words and take real action. Jimmy Lai, a British citizen, has been a vocal critic of Beijing and a key figure in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement. Let's first listen into his remarks.
What we've seen today and actually over the past 5 years is a complete breakdown of the Hong Kong legal system. And I think with that, a trust in the Hong Kong legal system, and with that, a trust in Hong Kong as a financial center. So I think, I can't speak on whether he would appeal or not, but I think it would be appealing in a system that is essentially broken and with a full deck of cards stacked against them. There's so many countries that have already called out. In fact, when the Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper went to the G7, she secured an agreement for all the countries in the G7 to work to secure my father's release. So yes, that would be incredibly helpful. That would put a lot of pressure on the Hong Kong and Chinese government, and to show that they can't get away with this very blatant persecution of our beliefs.
And joining me in this discussion is Ambassador Suresh Goel, who is a former diplomat, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Ambassador Goel, for joining us in this discussion. Now, you just heard the statement of Jamilai's son. He's saying it's a complete breakdown of a legal system in Hong Kong. There are also voices that are saying that it's a politically motivated conviction. Condemnation has come in, of course, from the United States and Western countries as well. Do you concede that this indeed is a politically motivated conviction, as is being said? It's being called a travesty of justice. What's your opinion?
Under the national security laws, which had been approved by China for Hong Kong sometime around 5 years or 6 years ago. And therefore, if we go by the strict interpretation of the law, one can easily say that they were in accordance with the prevention law in Hong Kong. And there are no two ways about it. At the same time, one has to look at the history of Hong Kong and how Hong Kong came to be reunited with China in 1997 under what conditions, and whether those conditions still prevail or those conditions have been changed. Now, your question is not so simple really. It's not a question of political motivation. It's a question of what China is all about. I still remember in 1997 when China and when Hong Kong went back to China, there was a clear understanding that China will actually implement the one country, two systems in that area. Indeed, clearly saying that Hong Kong will continue with its own democratic form of government. It will not have to be governed through the communist route from Beijing, and that continued for some time. However, please do see that 1997 was an entirely different China. Today, China is a very different country. In 1997, there was nothing like the Shanghai Stock Exchange. And all foreign currency trading in that area was done either by Singapore or by Hong Kong. Today, it's not the case. Shanghai has exceeded Hong Kong. Today, China is a much more powerful economic entity than Hong Kong is. In 1997, when Jiang Zemin, who was the Secretary General of China, agreed to the two system system, he knew that Hong Kong would be an important point for China to develop as an economic power, both in terms of investments and in terms of trading. China has done it. And Hong Kong, I don't think, really plays that important economic role for China anymore. And therefore, China can politically afford to go back on the condition that it had agreed to in 1997. And there we are. And I think, like the question was raised, whether UK will come to support Jamilai's case or not. I don't know really. I think today Europe has become so heavily dependent on China's rare earths is just one case. But in terms of investments, financial flows, I don't know if any country in Europe would really support Hong Kong against China.
But should that be mixed, the question of the freedom of press and the European Union's reliance on China for rare earth and for trade?
I think every side will continue to pay obeisance to the freedom of press in every country. But the freedom of press is as real or as artificial as the political system in that country is going to make it to be. Tomorrow, if, and I'm not going to name the countries here really, but it does happen that in most of the countries, the press does pay attention to what the political views or the political policies of that country are. And therefore, in this case also, if the laws in Hong Kong make it really difficult for the press to operate with the freedom that they want, so be it.
Yeah, well, it's clearly fallen in the press freedom index, so I think that suffices it. But do stay on, there's some more inputs now coming in from China in this regard. Viewers, China is calling on foreign countries to respect its sovereignty and the judicial system in Hong Kong following the conviction of Jimmy Lai. Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Zhikong made the remarks at a press briefing in Beijing, rejecting any interference in Hong Kong's judicial process and China's internal affairs. Lai, who's an outspoken critic of Beijing, was found guilty of 2 charges of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and 1 charge of publishing seditious material. The 78-year-old was a key figure in the anti-China protests that shook Hong Kong in recent years. His conviction has sparked international criticism, but China insists the case is an internal matter. Guo's statements reaffirm China's stance on upholding its legal and political framework in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. And I request Ambassador Goyal to join us back in the discussion here. Ambassador Goyal, would you say this is a doublespeak on part of China, maintaining that it has no role to play in China's internal legal system, while at the same time allowing only patriots to contest elections, curbing dissent after the typo fire incident? And I'm sure there are many more such instances, but I'm naming only the recent ones.
Yes. Kriti, I think what we need to really look at is that China, being the Chinese government in Beijing, being the central government, will obviously not tolerate any kind of activities in Hong Kong, which is taken by it to be either promoting separatism or going against the Chinese Communist Party or going against the Central Party. That is understood. It is going to happen. What has happened really here is that China is not even allowing the opposing political views to be published or to be actually articulated in Hong Kong. Now, I think important point really here is, and which should grab the attention of the Western countries, including the USA, is that there was a thought when Hong Kong became part of China, because China and most of the countries do agree that Taiwan and China are one country, and sooner or later Taiwan and China will be together. Even though Taiwanese government has vociferously said that Taiwan is now a different country. Most of the countries do not agree on that for the time being. Now the point really here is that at one time it was thought that China would allow Taiwan also to be integrated with China on the basis of one country, 2 systems theory. Now, if Hong Kong has been denied those privileges, what is going to happen to Taiwan? Can Taiwan still think, or can people in the world still think that Taiwan can be part of China on the basis of one country or 2 systems? I don't think it is possible anymore. So I think USA and Europe, who are more or less like the security guarantors to Taiwan, need to think as to what the future of Taiwan would be now that China can actually exercise its power on Hong Kong the way it does.
All right, thank you for your opinion, Ambassador Goyal.
Thank you.
And moving on, viewers, news from Southeast Asia. Cambodia has accused Thailand of bombing deep inside its territory, including Siem Reap province near the Angkor Wat temple complex, as border clashes escalate. A Thai fighter jet reportedly struck near a displaced civilians camp in Sri Snam district, marking the first time Siem Reap has been targeted and forcing hundreds to flee. Officials said the attack occurred more than 70 kilometers from the border. Let's listen in.
វាគឺជាសង្គ្រាមឈ្លានពានទឹកដីពេញទីដែលមិនអាចប្រកែកបានលើសពីនេះកងទ័ពឈ្លានពានថែមទាំងបានបាញ់ដាក់ទីតាំងស៊ីវិលដោយមិនរើសមុខមិនរើសទីកន្លែងដែលធ្វើឲ្យជនស៊ីវិលស្លូតត្រង់របស់យើងរងគ្រោះជាច្រើនហើយហេដ្ឋារចនាសម្ព័ន្ធស៊ីវិលជាច្រើនក៏រងការបំផ្លិចបំផ្លាញហេដ្ឋារចនាសម្ព័ន្ធជាច្រើនរងការបំផ្លិចបំផ្លាញដូចជាផ្ទះសម្បែងផ្លូវស្ពានសាលារៀនមន្ទីរពេទ្យវត្តអារាមរហូតដល់ប្រាសាទបុរាណដែលជាសម្បត្តិបេតិកភណ្ឌដ៏មានតម្លៃរបស់មនុស្សជាតិ
The strikes have alarmed Cambodia's tourism sector, with some visitors cancelling trips or rerouting amid safety concerns near the UNESCO-listed Angkor Wat. US President Donald Trump previously announced a ceasefire, but Thailand denied it, and clashes continue. And I now request Satoru Nagao to join us in this discussion. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo. Thank you, Mr. Nagao, for joining us back and continuing to remain available for us in this discussion. Mr. Nagao, of course, now Cambodia accusing Thailand of bombing near Siem Reap, which houses several of heritage temples. India has previously voiced its concerns over the bombings and violence near temple areas. Do you think international pressure is going to help deter Thailand in these bombings and strikes, as Cambodia alleges?
Difficult for Thailand to accept the ceasefire just now because Thailand is far stronger than the Cambodia militarily. Despite this, Thailand's perception is that Thailand attacked Cambodia by setting up mines and then killed some soldiers. So Thailand side soldiers. So that's why Thailand was very upset and started the operation. And now wider range of the front line, which is 800 kilometers, the Thailand start to bomb. And so that's why until the Cambodia concede much, it will continue because Thailand's perception is Cambodia attacked Thailand first. But if this battle continue for a long time, there is another concern indeed, because of the weakness of the Cambodia will ask the other country to help. In this case, traditional background of the Cambodia is of course China. So China tried to help Cambodia, and in this case, China is a big threat against Thailand. So that's why even if the Thailand cooperates with China for a long time, there is a possibility Thailand will ask a formal treaty-based ally, which is the United States. So that's why if this battle continue, it will be the front line between the U.S.-China Cold War in Southeast Asia. So that is another concern if the battle continue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nagao, for joining us and speaking to us once again. I'd let you go with that. Moving on, viewers, talks between Ukraine and the US of America in Berlin ended today without dissolving disagreements over Russian-occupied territory in eastern Ukraine. Officials have made the announcement. Kyiv rejects giving up areas such as parts of Donetsk and Luhansk that are largely under Russian control. Senior representatives from the NATO and the European Union are joining Ukrainian, US and European partners in Berlin as they explore ways to end Russia's invasion, but so far no breakthrough or territorial concessions is reported. In a major shift, President Zelensky signals that Ukraine is willing to set aside its long-held bid to join NATO in exchange for stronger, legally binding security guarantees from the US and European allies, a compromise aimed at ensuring future protection. Kyiv stands firmly against any peace deal that would require surrendering land, which Russia insists on recognition of its territorial gains as part of a settlement. At the same time, European Union leaders are working on how to finance Ukraine's defense and recovery, including proposals to use frozen Russian assets, though divisions remain among member states over the best approach. Negotiations are expected to continue as leaders aim to build consensus ahead of a European Council summit later this week. And before we wrap up this bulletin, let's give you news on Tesla and its board. Viewers, as per reports, Tesla's board of directors has earned more than $3 billion through stock awards that far exceeded the value of those given to peers at the biggest US technology firms at the time they were paid. The analysis found CEO Elon Musk's brother Kimball has earned nearly $1 billion since 2004 based on the appreciated value of stock options held or liquidated. Director Ira has collected $869 million since 2007. Board chair Robin Denholm has made $650 million since 2014. The value of those original awards skyrocketed along with Tesla's share price in subsequent years. In a statement to Reuters, a Tesla spokesperson said its directors' compensation is not excessive but directly tied to stock performance and shareholder value creation. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for all international news and updates.